A fragile alliance. In a galaxy torn by conflict between humans and the alien race known as the Zorix, an uneasy truce had been called. The fate of this fragile peace rested on the success of a crucial diplomatic mission. Lieutenant Kira Vance, a battle-hardened soldier with a keen strategic mind, had been chosen to represent humanity. Despite her initial reluctance, she understood the importance of this assignment. The future of her species depended on it. As Kira stepped off the transport ship onto the neutral space station, where the negotiations would take place, she steeled herself for what lay ahead. She had faced the Zorix in combat many times, but this would be a different kind of battle, one fought with words and compromise rather than weapons and tactics. The Zorix delegation awaited her in the cavernous central chamber. Towering over the assembled dignitaries was Thaxer, an 8-foot-tall warrior with rippling muscles and piercing amber eyes. He would be Kira's counterpart in these negotiations. Kira approached Thaxer warily, acutely aware of his imposing presence. Up close, he was even more intimidating than she had imagined. His deep blue skin was crisscrossed with scars, evidence of a lifetime spent in battle. "Lieutenant Vance," Thaxer rumbled, his voice like distant thunder. "I am Thaxer, first blade of the Zorix. I have been tasked with representing my people in these discussions." Kira met his gaze unflinchingly. "An honor to meet you, first blade. I hope that together we can find a path to lasting peace between our kinds." Thaxer's eyes narrowed slightly. "We shall see. The Zorix do not easily trust, especially not humans. Your species has proven treacherous in the past." Kira bristled at the accusation but maintained her composure. "As have yours. But we must find a way forward, for both our sakes. Endless war will only lead to mutual destruction." The Zorix warrior regarded her for a long moment before nodding slightly. "Agreed. Come, let us begin our work. But know this, human, if you betray us, there will be consequences." With that ominous warning hanging in the air, Kira and Thaxer turned to join the other delegates. The negotiations had barely begun, and already the tension was palpable. This would be a long and difficult process, fraught with mistrust and ancient animosities. As the discussions got underway, Kira found herself constantly at odds with Thaxer. He was stubborn, unyielding, and quick to anger. Every point was hard-fought, every concession grudgingly given. But Kira refused to back down. She argued passionately for her positions, using all her skills of diplomacy and persuasion. Slowly, painfully, progress was made. Late one night, as Kira pored over a proposed treaty document, Thaxer entered her quarters unannounced. She looked up, startled by his presence. "You are a formidable negotiator," he said without preamble. "I have underestimated you." Kira set down the document, regarding him cautiously. "Thank you. You are a worthy adversary as well." Thaxer grunted. "Adversary? Is that all we are doomed to be? Can there be no understanding between us?" "I hope there can be," Kira said softly. "But it will take more than hope. It will take trust, and a willingness to see past our differences." The Zorix was silent for a long moment. Then he extended his massive hand. "Then let there be a new beginning between us, a first step on a long road." Kira hesitated only a heartbeat before grasping his hand firmly. It engulfed her own, but there was a gentleness in his touch that surprised her. Perhaps this was a turning point, a chance for something more than the cycle of mistrust and violence that had defined their peoples for so long. But even as that fragile hope took root, Kira couldn't shake the feeling that their greatest challenges still lay ahead. For now, though, it was enough that they had begun the journey together. As the first round of negotiations concluded and Kira prepared to board her transport back to Earth, Thaxer pulled her aside. "Be cautious, Lieutenant," he rumbled softly. "There are those among my people who oppose any alliance with humans. They will seek to undermine our efforts." Kira nodded grimly. "The same is true on my side. We will have to be vigilant and stand united against those who would rather see war than peace." Thaxer clasped her shoulder, his massive hand nearly engulfing it. Agreed. Until we meet again, Kira Vance. May your journey be safe. With a final nod, Kira turned and strode up the ramp into her waiting ship. As it lifted off, she watched the space station dwindle away, Thaxter's imposing figure still visible on the observation deck. They had taken the first steps on an uncertain and perilous path. But for the first time, Kira allowed herself to believe that a future of peace might be possible, if they had the courage to fight for it. The future of two species now rested on the fragile bond between a human soldier and a Zorix warrior. The trials ahead would test that bond to its limits, and perhaps forge it into something unbreakable. Trials of trust. As Kira returned to Earth, she couldn't shake the feeling that the true test of her alliance with Thaxter was yet to come. She was right. Barely a week had passed when an urgent message arrived from the Zorix. Thaxter requested her immediate presence on a remote, uninhabited planet near the border of Zorix space. The message was cryptic, hinting at a discovery that could change the course of their nascent alliance. Kira didn't hesitate. She boarded a fast scout ship and set out for the coordinates Thaxter had provided. As she approached the planet, her sensors picked up a single Zorix vessel in orbit. It was Thaxter's ship. She landed near his location and emerged into a landscape of jagged rocks and swirling dust. Thaxter was waiting for her, his massive frame silhouetted against the alien sky. "Lieutenant Vance," he greeted her. "Thank you for coming so quickly." Kira nodded, her hand resting on her sidearm. "Your message sounded urgent. What's this about, Thaxter?" The Zorix gestured for her to follow. "It is best if I show you." He led her into a series of winding canyons, navigating the treacherous terrain with ease. Kira struggled to keep up, her human physiology poorly adapted to the planet's harsh conditions. Finally, they reached a small, hidden cave. Thaxter ducked inside, and Kira followed, her senses on high alert. What she saw inside made her gasp. The cave was filled with advanced technology, weapons, communication devices, sensor arrays, and all of it was of human design. "What is this?" Kira demanded, rounding on Thaxter. "How did our tech end up here?" Thaxter's expression was grim. "I believe it was smuggled here by rogue elements within your military. The same ones who oppose our peace efforts." Kira's mind raced. If Thaxter was right, it meant there was a conspiracy at the highest levels of human command to undermine the alliance. But could she trust him? This could be a Zorix trap. As if sensing her doubts, Thaxter spoke again. "I know what you must be thinking, but I swear to you, on my honor as a warrior, that this is no deception. We both have enemies who would rather see us destroy each other than unite." Kira held his gaze for a long moment, searching for any hint of a lie. She found none. Slowly, she nodded. "All right," she said. "I believe you. But what do we do now? If we reveal this, it could shatter the peace process." Thaxter's eyes glinted with determination. "We find out who is responsible. We expose the truth, no matter the cost. Our alliance must be built on a foundation of trust, or it will crumble." Kira took a deep breath, knowing the path ahead would be dangerous. "Agreed. Where do we start?" Before Thaxter could respond, a sudden explosion rocked the cave. Kira was thrown off her feet, debris raining down around her. Thaxter roared in pain as a chunk of rock struck his shoulder. "We are under attack." Kira scrambled to her feet, drawing her weapon. "We have to get out of here." They raced from the cave, only to be met with a hail of blaster fire. A group of human soldiers in unmarked combat gear was advancing on their position, weapons blazing. Kira and Thaxter dove for cover, returning fire. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they fought fiercely, working together with a seamless coordination that surprised them both. In the chaos of battle, a stray shot struck Kira's leg. She cried out, stumbling. Thaxter was at her side in an instant, his massive body shielding her from the onslaught. "Go!" Kira shouted over the din of battle. "Get to your ship. I'll hold them off." Thaxter shook his head, his expression fierce. "I will not leave you behind. We fight together, or not at all. With a roar of defiance, he charged into the fray, scattering the attackers with his sheer strength. Kira forced herself to her feet, ignoring the searing pain in her leg, and pressed forward, covering Thaxer's flank. Together, they fought their way back to their ships. As they lifted off, Kira saw the attackers retreating, disappearing into the canyons. In the aftermath of the battle, as they tended to their wounds, Kira turned to Thaxer. "You saved my life," she said softly. "Thank you." Thaxer met her gaze, something warm in his amber eyes. "And you saved mine. It seems we are even." Kira managed a pained smile. "I guess we are." But even as they reveled in their hard-fought victory, they both knew this was only the beginning. The conspiracy ran deep, and they had made powerful enemies. The path ahead would be fraught with danger. Yet in that moment, battered and bleeding but alive, Kira felt a glimmer of hope. She and Thaxer had faced death together and emerged stronger for it. Perhaps their bond was more resilient than either of them had realized. As they set course back to the space station, determined to unravel the web of lies and betrayal that threatened their alliance, Kira knew one thing for certain. Whatever trials lay ahead, she would not face them alone. She had found an ally, perhaps even a friend, in the most unlikely of places. And that bond, forged in the heat of battle, would be their greatest weapon in the fight to come. The enemy within. Kira and Thaxer returned to the space station, their wounds still fresh from the ambush on the remote planet. They knew they had to act quickly to uncover the conspiracy that threatened their fragile alliance. Their first step was to analyze the human technology they had found in the hidden cave. Kira used her security clearance to access restricted databases, searching for any clues about the origin of the equipment. What she found was chilling. The serial numbers on the weapons and devices matched those of a top-secret human military project, one so classified that even Kira had not been aware of its existence. Thaxer, meanwhile, used his own contacts within the Zorix hierarchy to gather intelligence. He discovered that there were elements within the Zorix leadership who opposed the peace process, seeing it as a sign of weakness. As they pieced together the evidence, a disturbing picture began to emerge. Rogue factions on both sides, human and Zorix, were working together to sabotage the alliance. They feared that peace would diminish their power and influence. Kira and Thaxer knew they had to expose this conspiracy, but they also realized the danger they were in. Their enemies were powerful and ruthless, willing to stop at nothing to achieve their goals. Their worst fears were realized when, during a routine security sweep, Kira was arrested by human military police. She was accused of treason, of collaborating with the enemy. As she was dragged away, she locked eyes with Thaxer across the room. In that moment, a wordless understanding passed between them. He would not abandon her. Kira was subjected to brutal interrogation, her captors demanding that she confess to her crimes. She refused, holding fast to her innocence and her belief in the alliance. Days turned into weeks, and still she did not break. She clung to the hope that Thaxer was out there, working to clear her name and expose the real traitors. She was not wrong. Thaxer, risking everything, launched his own investigation. He called in every favor, leveraged every contact, and slowly, painstakingly, he began to unravel the web of deceit. The breakthrough came when he managed to infiltrate a secret meeting of the conspiracy's leaders. There, he recorded their plans, their admissions of guilt. He had the proof he needed, but getting that proof to the right people would be the most dangerous part. The conspirators had eyes and ears everywhere. One wrong move, and all would be lost. Thaxer knew there was only one person he could trust completely. He had to get to Kira. In a daring move, he staged a diversion, drawing the attention of the guards away from Kira's cell. Then, using all his strength and skill, he broke in and freed her. Together, they fought their way out of the detention center, every step a battle. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they had something their enemies did not, a bond that could not be broken. Finally, they managed to escape, fleeing in a stolen ship. As they raced away from the space station, Kira turned to Thaxer, her eyes shining with gratitude and something more. "You came for me," she whispered. "You risked everything." Thaxer reached out, his massive hand gently cupping her cheek. "I will always come for you," he rumbled softly. "You are my ally, my friend, my heart." In that moment, hurtling through the stars with the whole galaxy against them, Kira realized the truth. Her bond with Thaxer was more than just a political alliance, more than a friendship forged in battle. It was love. A love that defied all boundaries, all prejudices. A love that could change the course of history. But first, they had a war to win, a conspiracy to destroy, and a peace to secure. The path ahead would be the most difficult they had ever faced, but they would face it together, side by side, united by a bond that could never be broken. The enemy within had been revealed. Now, it was time to fight back. And with Kira and Thaxer leading the charge, there was still hope for a future where humans and Zorics could live in harmony. A future worth fighting for, united against the odds. With the evidence of the conspiracy in hand, Kira and Thaxer knew they had to act fast. They set course for the Galactic Council, the neutral governing body that oversaw relations between the various species of the galaxy. Upon arriving, they immediately requested an emergency meeting with the council leaders. In a secure chamber, they presented their findings, the recordings of the conspirators' meetings, the documents detailing their plans, the evidence of their treachery. The council was shocked by the revelation. They had believed the peace process to be progressing smoothly, unaware of the dark forces working against it. Kira and Thaxer laid out their plan. They would return to their respective commands and rally their forces. Together, humans and Zorics would stand against the conspirators, exposing and rooting them out. It was a daring strategy, one that required trust and cooperation on an unprecedented scale. But Kira and Thaxer's bond had become a symbol of what was possible when two species set aside their differences and worked together. The council agreed to support their efforts, providing resources and political backing. Kira and Thaxer left the chamber, ready to face the greatest challenge of their lives. Back among their own people, they began the work of building their coalition. It was not easy. Many on both sides were hesitant to trust, scared by generations of conflict and prejudice. But Kira and Thaxer were relentless. They spoke passionately of the need for unity, of the strength that could be found in diversity. Slowly, painfully, they began to win hearts and minds. As their alliance grew, so too did the desperation of their enemies. The conspirators, realizing that their plans were unraveling, launched a series of increasingly brazen attacks, targeting both human and Zorics targets. Kira and Thaxer responded with swift and decisive action, leading joint strike teams to counter the threats. They fought side by side, their bond stronger than ever, a living embodiment of the alliance they had forged. The climax came in a massive battle in the skies above the Zorics' homeworld. The conspirators had assembled a vast fleet, determined to crush the alliance once and for all. Kira and Thaxer led the charge, their own ships at the vanguard. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they fought with a fearless determination, inspired by the righteousness of their cause. In the heat of battle, Thaxer's ship was hit, its shields failing. Kira saw the danger, saw the enemy fighters closing in for the kill. Without hesitation, she threw her own ship into their path, taking the brunt of their fire. Her shields flared and died. Her hull buckled under the onslaught, but she held firm, giving Thaxer the time he needed to recover. Together, they rallied their forces, turning the tide of battle. The conspirators' fleet was routed, their leaders captured or killed. The day was won, but at a great cost. Kira's ship was a ruined, battered hulk, barely able to limp back to base. And Thaxer had been gravely wounded, his massive body broken and bleeding. As Kira rushed to his side, he looked up at her, his amber eyes filled with pain and pride. "We did it," he whispered, his voice a rasping growl. We won. Kira took his hand, her own eyes brimming with tears. Yes, she said softly. We won. Thanks to you. Thaxter shook his head weakly. No, thanks to us. To what we built together. As the medics worked frantically to stabilize him, Kira held tight to his hand, refusing to let go. She knew that their journey was far from over, that there would be more battles to come. But she also knew that they would face those battles together, united by a bond that had been forged in the crucible of war and tempered by the power of love. They had stood against the odds and triumphed, and they would continue to stand, side by side, for as long as the galaxy needed them. The alliance had been tested, but it had not broken. Instead, it had emerged stronger than ever, a beacon of hope in a turbulent universe. And at its heart, two warriors, two lovers, two souls united in an unbreakable bond. A new hope. In the aftermath of the great battle, Kira and Thaxter found themselves hailed as heroes. Their bravery and sacrifice had not only saved countless lives, but had also forged a new era of peace and cooperation between humans and Zorics. As Thaxter recovered from his wounds, Kira never left his side. Their bond, tested in the fires of war, had emerged stronger than ever. It had become a symbol of hope for their peoples, proof that unity was possible. Across the galaxy, the story of their alliance spread. The tale of the human soldier and the Zorics warrior, who had defied all odds to stand together, captured the imagination of billions. In the halls of power, their example inspired a new wave of diplomacy. Old grievances were set aside, ancient enmities forgotten. A new spirit of cooperation and understanding began to take hold. But even as the galaxy celebrated, Kira and Thaxter knew their work was not done. The conspiracy had been defeated, but its roots ran deep. There were still those who clung to the old ways of hatred and division. As they healed and regained their strength, they began to plan for the future. They envisioned a galaxy where humans and Zorics not only coexisted but thrived together. A galaxy where their bond was not the exception, but the rule. To make that vision a reality, they knew they would need to be more than just warriors. They would need to be diplomats, leaders, visionaries. They would need to build bridges where there had once been only walls. It was a daunting task, but they were ready to face it together. They had already proven that there was no challenge they could not overcome, no obstacle they could not surmount, as long as they had each other. As they prepared to embark on this new journey, they took a moment to reflect on all they had been through. The battles, the sacrifices, the moments of despair and triumph. Through it all, their bond had been their anchor, their guiding light. It had given them the strength to keep fighting, even when all seemed lost. Now, as they looked to the future, that bond was more important than ever. It would be the foundation upon which they would build a new galaxy, a better galaxy. Hand in hand, they stepped forward, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. They knew the road would not be easy, but they also knew they would walk it together. Always together, united by a love that had changed the course of history. But even as they took those first steps, a new shadow fell across their path. A shadow that threatened to engulf not just their bond, but the fragile peace they had fought so hard to achieve. In the depths of space, a new enemy was stirring. An enemy more ancient and more powerful than any they had faced before. An enemy that had been waiting, biding its time, for the perfect moment to strike. And now, as Kira and Thaxter stood on the threshold of a new era, that moment had come. The future they had dreamed of, the future they had sacrificed for, hung in the balance. Everything they had built, everything they held dear, was at risk. The greatest test of their bond, of their love, lay ahead. A test that would push them to the very limits of their strength and devotion. But they were ready. Ready to fight, ready to sacrifice, ready to do whatever it took to defend what they had built together. For they knew, in the very depths of their souls, that their love was the most powerful force in the universe, a force that could overcome any obstacle, defeat any enemy, conquer any fear. Together, They would stand against the coming darkness. Together, they would fight for the light. Always together, now and forever. Unbreakable. As the new threat loomed on the horizon, Kira and Thaxter wasted no time. They rallied their forces, human and Zorix alike, preparing for the battle to come. The enemy they faced was unlike any they had encountered before. An ancient race, long thought extinct, had emerged from the depths of space. They called themselves the Velox, and they had only one goal: to reclaim their place as the dominant species in the galaxy. Kira and Thaxter studied every scrap of information they could find about this new foe. They learned that the Velox possessed technology far beyond anything humans or Zorix had ever seen. They had the ability to manipulate matter and energy on a fundamental level, to bend the very fabric of space and time to their will. But the Velox's greatest weapon was not their technology, but their ability to sow discord and fear. They preyed on the divisions that still existed between humans and Zorix, exploiting old prejudices and resentments. Kira and Thaxter knew that the only way to defeat this enemy was to stand together. They worked tirelessly to strengthen the bonds of their alliance, to remind their peoples of what they had achieved together. It was not an easy task. The Velox's influence was insidious, and many on both sides were swayed by their promises of power and dominion. But Kira and Thaxter's bond was unshakable, and their determination was infectious. As the Velox fleet approached, the combined forces of humanity and Zorix stood ready. Kira and Thaxter led the charge, their ships at the vanguard of the defense. The battle was unlike anything they had ever experienced. The Velox's ships seemed to shimmer and shift, disappearing and reappearing at will. Their weapons tore through shields and armor like paper, leaving devastation in their wake. But Kira and Thaxter fought on, their bond giving them strength. They adapted their tactics, using their knowledge of each other's strengths and weaknesses to compensate for the Velox's technological advantage. In the heart of the battle, they confronted the Velox leader, a towering figure radiating an aura of menace. The alien taunted them, promising them power beyond their wildest dreams if they would only surrender. But Kira and Thaxter stood firm. They knew that the Velox's promises were empty, that their only true power came from the bond they shared. In a final, desperate gambit, the Velox leader unleashed a weapon that tore at the very fabric of reality. Space and time warped and twisted, threatening to tear the galaxy apart. But Kira and Thaxter's bond was stronger than any weapon. They reached out to each other, their minds and hearts merging in a blaze of light. Their combined strength poured forth, a wave of pure energy that swept across the battlefield. The Velox's ships crumbled, their weapons shattering. The leader let out a final, agonized scream as he was engulfed in the light, his form dissolving into nothingness. And then it was over. The Velox were gone, their threat vanquished. The galaxy was safe, the alliance secure. But the true victory, Kira and Thaxter knew, was not in the battle they had won, but in the bond they had forged. A bond that had proven stronger than any force in the universe, a bond that would guide them and their peoples into a brighter future. In the years that followed, Kira and Thaxter worked to rebuild what had been lost. They fostered new alliances, new understanding between the myriad species of the galaxy. Under their guidance, the galaxy entered a new era of peace and prosperity. An era where the old divisions were forgotten, where the only thing that mattered was the strength of the bonds that held them all together. And at the center of it all, Kira and Thaxter, the human and the Zorix, the soldier and the warrior, the lovers and the leaders. Their bond had become the stuff of legend, a shining example of what could be achieved when two hearts, two souls, became one. They had faced the greatest challenges the universe could throw at them, and they had emerged victorious, not through strength of arms, but through the power of their love. A love that would endure, unbreakable and eternal, a guiding light for generations to come. Together, always together, they would face the future, and no force in the universe would ever tear them apart.